During the course of COVID, my girlfriend cheated on me and requested for an openness in our relationship. So I gave in and got my revenge by dating other girls. Then I kicked her out of the house and burned anything that was associated with her. How are you today? I'm only here to get this out of my system. With regard to the events that have transpired in my life over the past few years, I have been attending therapy, and I have been informed that writing down my emotions will be beneficial. And thus I am here. It was during COVID in the year 2020 that I began dating my very first true girlfriend. We'll refer to her as Sonja. The grocery shop was the place where we actually met, and I was the one who held the door open for her. She smiled warmly, and her eyes sparkled with a kind of light that made the gray and stressful atmosphere of that time feel a little brighter. It was a small act of kindness, but it led to a brief conversation about the challenges of grocery shopping during the pandemic, and not even challenges of grocery shopping, but just life in general. As most of us are aware, her smile was warm and her eyes sparkled with a kind of light. Due to the fact that it was my very first serious relationship, I say that it was real. Back in the year 2020, I was a young adult of 23 years old. My age difference between Sonja and me was a couple of years, and she was working as a nurse. From the very beginning, it was clear that she was committed to her work and eager to do it. What I appreciated most about her was the fact that she had this quality. Despite the chaos that was caused by the pandemic, she never failed to make time to listen to my concerns and provide me with solace. Her capacity for compassion and resilience served as a rock that could be clung to in the midst of the storm. To tell you the truth, it was one of the darkest moments, yet she made life feel good and bright, if that makes any sense. We weren't the only ones there. Each of us had the other. Both of us witnessed one other's lowest point, with me losing my job and her dealing with the stress of work at the time. On the other hand, we had each other. Her love for life was contagious, and it was this excitement that drew me in. It didn't matter if we were talking about our lives or simply strolling around the park. She made everything feel like a special occasion. As a result of her generosity, her knowledge, and the way she was able to make even the most ordinary of situations feel like they were extraordinary, I fell in love with her. The oddball sense of humor that she possessed never failed to make me laugh, even on the days that I was feeling the worst. She possessed an extraordinary ability to make me feel seen and understood in a manner that no one else had ever been able to do before. And here I am today, still trying to make sense of everything that took place between us and the reasons why things went wrong. The event occurs in waves. Putting something in writing is supposed to be helpful, and it might be just that. At the very least, it is an opportunity to reflect on the enjoyable times we shared and to pay tribute to what we had. To put it another way, it began some time before the anniversary of our year. After she returned home from work one evening, I was overcome with a terrible feeling in my gut that I had never had before. There was a complete lack of enthusiasm between us. Her intention was to come over after work, but she made an attempt to get out of it. On previous occasions, she had arrived home from work completely weary, and on other occasions, she had abandoned me due to the challenging days she had spent at the hospital, which I completely understood. But simply put, that day had a different vibe. Sonia would still call her texts with the same love that she always does, even when she was too exhausted to visit me in person. I am apologizing and committing to making amends for my mistake. On that particular evening, however, her texts were brief and even icy. Moreover, when I pressed on meeting her, she reluctantly agreed to meet with me. In a sense, that was how things had been over the entire week. At the time of her arrival, she appeared to be more than merely exhausted. She appeared to be at a distance, as if her thoughts were a million miles away, and she was not communicating with me in any manner. Her typical grin was absent, and in its stead was an expression that was artificial and almost mechanical. The talk was tense when we sat down to eat the food that I had prepared for us while we were eating. Sonja hardly made a sound. To brighten the tone, I made an effort. I tried to bring up our favorite inside jokes and memories that we had in common, but she seemed to be completely uninterested. My level of anxiousness increased as the night progressed. As I continued to question myself about whether or not I had done something wrong or whether something had occurred at work, I eventually reached a point where I could no longer take it and gently contacted her, asking if everything was okay. While she avoided my sight, she let out a loud sigh and explained that she was simply extremely exhausted and stressed out from her work. However, the sentences she spoke seemed empty and lacked sincerity. I was experiencing a pang of insecurity for the very first time in our relationship, and I became curious about whether or not there was something that she was keeping from me. A plethora of alternatives flooded my thoughts. Not one of them is good. Had she been dissatisfied with me? Is there another person present? My anxiety was getting the better of me, and I was having a hard time putting those ideas out of my mind. I was trying to persuade myself that I was exaggerating the situation. Over the course of that particular night, as we were lying in bed, the gap that separated us seemed to be insurmountable. Although she fell asleep soon, I remained awake and stared at the ceiling the entire time. I am not really able to articulate the sensation. More than anything else, it seemed to be intuitive. A few of you have probably been through something similar in the past. Although I am aware that it was perhaps inappropriate to look through her phone, I had no choice but to find out. I had no choice but to put an end to it, even if there was nothing in particular wrong with it. It is embarrassing for me to admit that I looked through her phone. I was browsing through a series of messages when I came across a name that I was unfamiliar with. The more I read through them, the more my heart fell. A portion of me really hoped that I wouldn't come across anything like that, but I don't know what I initially expected I would discover. I don't know what I felt I should find. There were even many plans to meet up, as well as flirtatious texts, s-sing, and talks that took place late at night. Every one of my biggest concerns was being validated right in front of my very eyes. More messages with other men were discovered as I probed more into the matter, exposing the fact that she had been sleeping with someone else during what appeared to be the entirety of our relationship. I was hit like a ton of bricks when I came to the conclusion. Despite my best efforts, the lady I loved, whom I believed I knew very well, had been leading a double life. At this point, every memory we shared together felt poisoned. What a horrible joke every single moment of enjoyment is. I was overcome with feelings of rage, betrayal, and sadness all at the same time. The magnitude of what I had found was so overwhelming that I was unable to breathe, and my chest tightened up as I attempted to digest it. My brother was crying when I contacted him in the morning, and when I challenged her, I was immediately met with crocodile tears. You have my apologies for manipulating me by threatening to hurt myself. Due to the fact that I was young and naive, I fell for her convincing portrayal of herself as a victim. After some time, I gave in. She brought up the concept of having a relationship that is open and honest. I was not quite prepared to let her go at that moment. My self-blame and apology were directed on the fact that I was not good enough for her to desire to remain with a single man. There was a period when she allowed me to bear the blame. I promised her that I would become a better man. The open relationship idea was something I tried, but I didn't meet any other ladies during that time. The most of the time, she was just talking to males and saying that she wasn't talking to the same guy that she had been cheating on me with. If she wanted to bring a third person into the bedroom with us, there were occasions when she wanted to do so, and I succumbed to her request out of fear that she would leave me. However, the greatest surprise is that she did not want it to be a girl. It was only male third parties that she desired. Unwisely, I gave in and agreed. Because I was unable to put my faith in her, I asked her to move in with me after she had been doing it for around 6 months. We discussed the possibility of getting married and beginning a polyamorous relationship. I had given it some thought for a short period of time. Now, however, I was under the impression that if we lived together, I would be able to exert some influence on our relationship. But I immediately recognized that was a wish that was based on fantasy. She started inquiring about the possibility of additional people moving in with us, stretching the limits of what is possible even further. I put up a fight. I did not want our house to become a place where all kinds of strangers would come and go. I felt increasingly powerless in my own relationship, despite the fact that I had made efforts to establish boundaries. As time goes on, she begins to have sexual encounters with her other lovers, and she continues to reject me. In terms of segs, we have very few. Over the course of another year, this strange arrangement continued, and at long last, something changed within me. I became enraged, and began to become resentful of her. After that, I became really acrid and icy. That the lady I loved had caused me such a great deal of pain was incomprehensible to me, to the point that it turned into a dark desire for revenge. The hurt and betrayal that I felt inside of me continued to fester. I made the decision to take her own medicine and give her a taste of it. I set out to meet women, brought them back to my house, and then spoke with Sonja about the possibility of having threesomes. After everything that she had done to me, she became angry with me for even asking, which was the epitome of hypocrisy given the circumstances around me. I made certain that she was aware of the suggestive pictures and amorous texts that were stored on my phone. In spite of the fact that I would arrive home late, smelling of perfume, I would not provide any excuses. Despite the fact that it had been one of our strictest restrictions, I would not reveal to her who I was with. I wished for her to experience the same feelings of paranoia and anguish that I had, for such a long time. The experience of witnessing her wrath was like a peculiar form of vindication nonetheless. It did not provide the fulfillment that I had hoped for. On the contrary, it only served to intensify my feelings of loss and disillusionment. The woman whom I had once cherished and looked up to had turned into a source of suffering and contempt for me. A relationship that had once brought me a great deal of happiness had become a vicious cycle of betrayal and retribution over many years. Every single facet of my life was being completely torn apart by the whole affair. Because I felt ashamed, I spent very little time with my family anymore. When I finally did see them, They expressed their dissatisfaction with the fact that they had forgotten who I was. My brother remarked on how miserable and depressed I appeared to be. When I finally opened my eyes in the year 2023, I found myself wondering, what the hell am I accomplishing? Who exactly am I? I had no idea that I had changed into the person I had become. As of this moment, Sonia and I were really simply roommates. The bed that we had been sharing was no longer the same one. Almost seldom did our paths intersect. While I was trying to keep our relationship solely physical, one of these ladies who I had started seeing in an effort to make Sonia jealous was truly falling in love with me. I was just trying to keep it that way, seeing as how Sonia was hurting me. I decided to end it since I didn't want to hurt other people. At this point, I informed Sonja that I could no longer continue doing this and that I was squandering my life with this one, an only fool who was cheating on me right in front of my eyes. I requested that she vacate the premises. That was not an easy task. When she initially heard about it, she flat out refused to accept it. It was stated that she would not be leaving. I also told her that I would pack up her belongings for her and leave them all on the lawn if she did not go, since I expected her to depart. It was she who informed me that I was going to toss away everything. My response was that it was actually my apartment, and she was being the worst roommate I've ever had. She stated that I couldn't just push her out because it was our place, but I told her that her behavior was unacceptable. After that, the floodgates opened, and I informed her that she was a wicked person who only wanted to hurt me, and that ever since I found out that she had cheated on me, I have been a dead man walking. In addition to telling me that I was being overly dramatic, she also mentioned that the entire life requires two individuals. When I went ahead and accepted to the open relationship, she told me that I was aware of what I was getting myself into. It was then that she called me a weak little boy and told me that I was a quitter and that I was just giving up. She claimed that I could have said no at any moment, and then she called me a weak little boy. I also stated that she was the one who gave up the moment she made the decision to cheat on me, and that she continued to cheat on me to this day. I mentioned that I had attempted to make it work, and from that point on, the dispute became more heated. Specifically, she accused me of being self-centered and unreasonable, as well as of giving up on our relationship without making sufficient efforts to repair it. I responded by enumerating all of the ways in which she had caused me anguish, the countless nights that I had spent suffering over her betrayals, and the instances in which I had denied both my pride and my pain in order to maintain our relationship. My actions consisted of simply gathering up her belongings and carrying them out into the grass from that point on, including even the smallest of items that I was aware she had purchased, such as planters, pots, and bottles of wine with labels. Whatever it was that belonged to her, I simply desired to release it. She began yelling at me and pushing me at the same time. At one point, she made an attempt to physically assault me, and I had no choice but to tell her to leave the house. After making a phone call to one of her partners, the situation continued to worsen from that point on, and the legal system became engaged. The relationship between her partner and I became physical. During the course of my self-defense, I ended up bleeding all over my front porch. He was ultimately charged, and he was incarcerated for a few nights as a result. When Sonja attempted to return the following day, she was crying and attempting to apologize for her behavior. I responded to her inquiry by telling her that she may go to any of the other partners that she had, as well as friends or family members. She then asked me where she was supposed to go. I informed her in no uncertain terms that I was finished. She had a fit of outbursts. I told her that I am unable to continue living in such a manner. To this day, she has not given in, using every possible reason to put off what is unavoidable. She manipulated my feelings by bringing to memory the enjoyable times we had spent together and the plans we had made for the future. I informed her that she needed to get her belongings packed and that I did not want to see her again. I told her that I would assist her with packing up her belongings and loading them into a vehicle, and that it was imperative that it be taken out by the end of the day. It took some time for her to come to terms with the reality of the situation. She finally gave in after hours of back and forth, tears, and vomiting. Yes, she threw up from hyperventilating when she finally gave in, despite the fact that it was obvious that she was not even close to accepting it. As I was carrying things outside, she added, "I hope you know what you're doing. I was putting things outdoors." I also mentioned that it was something that I ought to have done a very long time ago or earlier. In the end, my brother and his wife came over to provide assistance and just to provide moral support, and I am extremely grateful to them for demonstrating such a supportive attitude. The moment she drove away for the very last time, I was overcome with a range of feelings. Once I was able to regain my space in my life, I felt a sense of relief, but I was also overcome with a tremendous sense of loss for the love that had been lost and the future that would never be after that. I blocked her on my phone and on social media, and although it may sound dramatic, I destroyed pretty much everything she had left behind. Almost everything that may have served as a reminder of her was gone. As it turned out, this was the first serious relationship that I ever had, and it was terrible. My naive expectations of love were completely crushed by this one. Not only did the betrayal and heartbreak teach me more about myself, but they also taught me more about the complexity of relationships than I could have ever imagined. The first relationship was, without a shadow of a doubt, a terrible one. Understanding the significance of trust, communication, and self-respect was something that I had to learn the hard way. In spite of the suffering, it allowed me to understand the importance of establishing boundaries and the value that I provide to the world. This experience taught me that genuine affection should not be acquired at the expense of my own happiness and well-being. After all was said and done, this experience molded me. It heightened my awareness of the things that I require and deserve in a romantic partnership. Despite the fact that it was a difficult lesson, it ultimately helped me become more resilient and more equipped for future romantic partnerships. In the event that it is of any solace, I was informed by one of our pals that Sonia had been terminated from her position at the hospital due to the fact that she had been performing extremely poorly recently. A few of her co-workers had been expressing their dissatisfaction with her. It seems that I wasn't the only one who had problems with her and finding it difficult to trust her. In addition to failing to properly fill out patient charts, it appears that she had been stealing medication for some of her partners. As far as I am aware, hospital authorities are apparently conducting an internal inquiry to determine the impact that Sonia's behavior has had on the overall quality of care provided to patients and the dynamics of the workplace. I appreciate you taking the time to read this. For all of this, if there is one piece of advice that I can give you, it is that if something in your relationship seems strange, you should not dismiss it. Putting your faith in your intuition and discussing any worries you may have with your partner is important. Don't accept anything less than what you truly deserve. You have earned the right to be in a relationship with someone who respects and values you, who is devoted to the development of a loving and healthy relationship, and who is faithful. Although you may put up your best efforts, there are occasions when a relationship may not be healthy or enjoyable. If it is no longer being of service to you or bringing you enjoyment, you should not be scared to walk away from it. Keep in mind that it is perfectly acceptable to put your personal happiness and well-being first. So, let's go on to the next tale. The second story. Although my husband's wheelchair is unable to approach the location for Sister Cho's wedding, he was referred to as a cripple during the Mother's Day brunch. It seems that my folks are blaming my pregnancy hormones for the fact that I am cutting her off. Brett, who is 40 years old, and I, who is 36 years old, have been married for the past 6 years. A prior relationship resulted in the birth of my daughter, F, who is now 10 years old. At the time, we were engaged, but he left me when I became pregnant in order to be with his coworker. He finally vanished. Not only does Brad admire and love my kid, but my daughter also adores him a great deal. I am now expecting our first child, which will be my second child overall. Brad suffers from paraplegia. During his 21st year, he was involved in an automobile accident. Since his accident, he has returned to school and is currently working as a professor at a university. He is extremely self-reliant and has the potential to be the best man I could ever marry. Today, my sister made the announcement that she has chosen a heritage building as the location for her upcoming wedding. Then I informed her that it would not be accessible to wheelchair users. In response, she rolled her eyes and stated that Brad is not the center of the universe, and that today is not his day, it belongs to me. I responded that I do comprehend, but I will not be abandoning him at that time. It was then that she began to shout that I was attempting to attract attention, since everyone would be wondering where the bride's sister was. It was recommended by her fiancé that the ceremony should take place in the heritage building, but the reception should take place at a different location so that Brad can be a part of it. No, my sister responded. Brad and I had a conversation, and he suggested that I go. He also said that he and my daughter could go on a date, and he would be responsible for taking care of her. The wedding is not going to have any children in attendance, and at first we were going to ask Brad's mother to watch my daughter. He believes that it is not a big deal, and that I ought to just go and enjoy the wedding with him. I am in a terrible mood and I do not want to go, but I know that my sister will be frustrated. What would happen, AITA, if I did not attend my sister's wedding because she did not invite my husband? Comments. Please continue to emphasize the fact that the actuator is 8,316. What you feel is the appropriate thing to do. It is clear that you have a deep affection for your husband. It is very reasonable for you to feel angry about the fact that your sister wants to exclude him. Moreover, it is serious. In order for him to be able to go, how difficult is it to hire a temporary ramp that can be installed? However, given that I am not familiar with the stair problem, I am able to give a pass about it. However, there are choices available. Sadly, it is an old history building with a large number of stairs. The building is quite steep. TVH, I am feeling a lot of sympathy for my hubby. Blue furnishings, the concept of a day for fathers and daughters is appealing to me. As a member of the wedding party, are you? By avoiding compliance with the AITA regulations, how does the heritage building get away with it? Despite the fact that your sister is terrible, at least the fiancé is compassionate. If there is no wedding, you shouldn't be startled by this. Oh no, I'm not a member of the wedding party. Unfortunately, the year 2024 has arrived, and Canada still does not have anything like to AITA. Due to the fact that it is a history building, they do not care about improving accessibility. A daddy-daughter date is something that my husband does once a month. That much is true. Every time, they go to a different restaurant, and she has the freedom to choose the activities that they do. A grin, and a wonderful asparagus 8788. The first thing I have to say is that your sister did not become different overnight. I am the mother of a kid who has an unusual ability. Her entire life, she has been allowed to continue engaging in her terrible behavior. It's time for your parents to feel ashamed. However, your hub sounds like a great place. If you want to turn your back on a dumpster fire, you do not need to seek for permission to do so. Emphasize the fact that it is ablaze and the advantage that you have. Following the extinguishment of the fire, the presence of your husband and their grandchild will be reinstated. Then we will depart. This is a major deal my parents are paying for my sister's wedding. In addition, they paid for my reception that was held at my house when we eloped, and they invited everyone, which was approximately 14 people, to a restaurant. I interacted with them. It is my sister's birthday, and they cannot compel her to change her views about Brad, even if they have stated that they really love him. Absolutely, I am dissatisfied with them. I just do not comprehend how you can assert that you appreciate someone while at the same time telling them to remain at home. Since my spouse is accustomed to not being included, he is fine with not being included. You are not welcome. I simply am unable to get over it. The fact that she is able to hold her wedding wherever she chooses is well within her rights, Mandy Landy, NTA. It is also within your rights to decline her invitation if you do not wish to exclude your husband from the event. Her refusal to change the location of the celebration, despite the fact that her fiancé was eager to do so, is what makes her the unlucky one. It would be a wonderful way to have the best of all worlds if she was concerned about your presence at the event. When 1236 is reached, the fact that she would treat Brad as if he were attention-seeking behavior while he is in a wheelchair is another thing that is completely insane. I'm relieved that it didn't make him feel offended or unhappy. If, on the other hand, he were my boyfriend and my sister were behaving in such a manner, I would be incensed. In particular, considering that you have been married for 6 years. Unlike a new relationship, this one is not brand new. Instead of being concerned about how it appears that she excluded her brother-in-law by selecting a location despite being aware that he is unable to attend, she is more concerned about how it appears that she did not show up. It is impossible to make that kind of cat soap bar seem any better. I am supposed to be paying attention to my wheelchair, but I am not supposed to do that. Oh no, it was on purpose that I purchased a bright red one. Most people do not pay attention to wheelchair users. It is as if we do not exist. On the other hand, the attention that we do receive is a lot of fun. The act of random strangers questioning you for your medical history, demanding to know if you genuinely require the chair, insisting that you do require assistance, presuming that because your body is broken, your brain is also broken, and so on and so forth are all examples of this. In light of this, any location that is used for events ought to be accessible to wheelchair users. If a significant number of the medieval structures in my city are able to be made accessible, then any heritage venue that this is may also be made accessible. In many cases, all that is required is a ramp, a lift or elevator, and a restroom that is fully accessible. Onward. You, on the other hand, your sister. Provide an update. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone for their nice comments and guidance. As it is Mother's Day today, my husband and my daughter have made the decision to show their appreciation by giving me a horrible smile. We celebrated Mother's Day by having lunch at my folks' house. Bobek is the name of my sister's fiancé, Bob, who is also my sister's. His name is Bob, but everyone calls him Bob. He is of Iranian descent. King was in the backyard, where Brad, Bob, and my dad were speaking with each other. In the kitchen, my mother and my sister were having a conversation. When it came to her wedding preparations, my sister went on and on. I inquired of her whether there should, to tell Julia that she was blocking her again. The two of them are now even more enraged with me than before. The only way they can reach me anymore is by email, therefore I know they created another false account only to yell at me. They threatened to hold me financially responsible for all that had happened. Ooh, that's terrifying. I can feel their utter disarray right this second. Even while I'm not very frightened, it can be really annoying. They had better watch out because I responded in writing that I would not hesitate to contact the police and put them in jail if they attempted anything inappropriate with me. Be any chance that she would take Bob's recommendation into consideration. Both her civil ceremony and her Iranian ceremony are available to her. And all of her photographs taken at the location of her dreams, followed by the reception, which consists of little more than a supper, a dance, and a cake somewhere else. I told her that it would mean a great deal to me if she could make this type of adjustment for Brad. It was lost by my sister. I began yelling that I have always been envious of her, and that I am currently attempting to wreck her dream wedding. She told me that I am envious because I never had a huge wedding and I had to elope, because I had a child that was not born to me, but I did not have two. Crossing my fingers that it terrifies them frequently if not, I've set up a decent security system. 3 days ago, I got an email from Louis and Julia informing me that I will be held accountable for my actions. They nevertheless managed to pull off the most ridiculous thing imaginable, despite my warnings that I would contact the authorities if they attempted anything inappropriate. They made an attempt to enter my house last night. On multiple occasions, Julia has dropped by my place. I was immediately notified the moment they tried to access my door since, as she knows, I have a highly sophisticated security. Children outside of marriage. Our choice to have a stress-free elopement was decided upon by both of us. In addition, she stated that it was my decision to marry a disabled man, thus there is no reason for her to alter her existing wedding preparations. My mother insisted that she stop, but she continued on regardless. After that, I informed her that I would not be coming. Brad and my kid were informed that we were going to be leaving. I could no longer continue to remain there. Her sense of entitlement makes me sick. Due to the fact that your sister is experiencing a lot of stress, my parents are now angry with me for even suggesting it. Both my father and my mother believe that I overreacted because I am pregnant and hormonal. My father believes that I acted immature by leaving. I, too, am system. At about 1 in the morning, they apparently thought my door would be unlocked. And I have no idea why. I immediately contacted the authorities to report an attempted break-in to my residence. I was hoping it would be Julia and Louis, but I was afraid it might not be, so I was cautious. They arrived within 15 minutes, but to make matters worse, they were apprehended while dressed as burglars, making a break for it a short distance from my house, because they had cycled all the way here without their car. They both made an effort to deflect responsibility by saying they knew me personally, and weren't. Extremely dissatisfied with my parents since they did not take a stand against my sister. My sister and I are going to go to North Carolina. I have no idea who she is anymore. I have no idea. Therefore, there is no happy update. I have recently severed my relationship with my sister, and I no longer want to attend her wedding. Sorry for any errors, I'm experiencing a lot of emotion right now. Keep Bob safe, comments, and ringings 3. The fact that your parents let and forgive your sister's outbursts is evidence that she is a jerk. If it were me, I would put my sister on NC and my parents on LC. I really hope that this serves as a wake. Attempting to steal anything. They wanted to talk to me, scare me a bit, so they broke in. I failed to see why they confessed to that, as if it would improve their legal standing. Upon being placed in handcuffs, Julia began to sob uncontrollably and begged me not to bring charges against her, but I was unable to empathize with her. No matter how many times you mess up, no one will ever forgive you. Even though Louis maintained his icy, hateful expression, I had grown accustomed to it, and it didn't bother me in the least. Anyway, I slept it off, because I had to be at work early in the morning. I informed my parents and aunt about what had happened, and they said they were aware because Julia had tried to get my aunt to come save her by calling her, but my aunt refused to even visit her, so now no one knows what's going to happen. I intend to file charges against them because I desire a protective order against them. Their mental state is clearly unstable, and I refuse to have any contact with them. Call for Bob for McGill Hufflepuff. Due to the fact that life is unpredictable, I would not want to be married to someone who is insensitive to the requirements of disabled people. This is because impairments and additional disabilities can occur at any time. Domco B.O. Bob ought to inquire of her what would occur in the event that he got paraplegic in order to preserve Bob. It's okay to let them become angry. Swampy_63. It is their loss. Exactly who she is has been demonstrated by your sister. It's Bubby. It is my hope that your parents would come to their senses and comprehend the reasons for your decision to not travel. It is Captain Hyena 12. Wow. That is an insult. Your spouse calls him a handicap, and he takes shots at both you and your child for the fact that the child was born outside of wedlock. Then, your parents have the gall to tell you that you are overreacting because you left what? I don't understand how any person could possibly have that much. My name is Audacity, and I am the one who is here. Someone who, at times, displays a level of daring that appears to be excessive. The number 123 for Kate Pig. How very depressing it is. It is true that sister is a bridezilla. The op's sister is acting all out at the Dilkin show. And putting aside her reaction, I wonder if I am the only one who concurs that relocating the entire venue due to the actions of a single individual is likewise asking for too much. In spite of the fact that sister is acting as a bridezilla, she does have more pressing matters to attend to than Brad at the moment. I get the impression that both sides of the argument are keen to exaggerate their positions. In spite of the fact that I am not very knowledgeable about the practicalities of providing accessibility to older buildings for people with disabilities, there must be some kind of compromise here. Although they can put ramps in strategic locations, it is certain that Brad will not be able to access all areas of the facility. There must be a method to make it function for a few hours at the very least. My interpretation of this is that the building is not accessible in any way, and this is the case with difficult bottle 698. In addition, accessibility encompasses more than just ramps. It also includes things like doors that are sufficiently wide, restrooms that are accessible to people with disabilities, and so on. It has been decided that Brad will not be able to attend the wedding due to his disabilities. That is really all there is to it. Due to the fact that I am disabled, when my friends have been married, they have chosen the locations they have chosen because of the accessibility, which allows me to be a part of the event. There have even been friends of mine who, when they move into a new house, one of the things they consider is whether or not I will be able to move in. As someone who recently tied the knot, I am well aware of how stressful it can be to figure out how to arrange a wedding. On the other hand, you make certain that the people who are going to be there, the people whom you love and care about the most in the entire world, are going to be there, that they are going to be pleasant, and that they are going to have a nice time. According to Superculture 9114, it is quite obvious that she does not want a disabled person to be present at her wedding in any way. In the photographs, he would be seen sitting in a wheelchair. Oh, the horror. I am curious about the century that Quirmtricia, NTA, is channeling when she refers to your spouse as a cripple and implies that your daughter is a bastard.